No! There should be another way. We will pay you your money, but please don't hurt my father.
Please, please, I'll do anything. Anything. Just give me more time.
I didn't call for you.
I don't care. Rough night? Don't worry, darling. He always comes back to me.
The coffee machine hissed, releasing steam into the morning air of Colson coffee. Rose wiped down the counter for the third time that hour, her hands moving in practiced circles even as her mind wandered elsewhere. The cafe smelled of roasted beans and fresh pastries, a comfort she'd known since her father opened this place 5 years ago when they'd first moved to Seoul from Chicago. Rose, sweetheart, can you handle the front for a bit? Her father's voice carried from the back room, tight in a way that made her pause mid-wipe. She turned to find him standing in the doorway, his brown skin pale beneath the fluorescent lights, his hands gripping the doorframe like he needed it for support. Thomas Colson had always been a mountain of a man, broad-shouldered and steady. But today, he looked diminished. "Dad, you okay?" "Fine, fine." He forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Just need to make a phone call." Business stuff, Rose had been hearing that phrase more and more lately. Always delivered with that same unconvincing smile, always followed by her father disappearing into the back room for hushed conversations. She wanted to press, to demand answers, but the morning rush was starting and 3 customers had just walked through the door. She plastered on her brightest smile and returned to the counter. "Good morning, what can I get started for you?" The next hour passed in a blur of orders and small talk. Rose moved through the familiar rhythm, steaming milk, pulling espresso shots, arranging pastries on small plates. This was her life now, simple and safe. She'd left behind dreams of art school to help her father when money got tight. It was supposed to be temporary. That was 2 years ago. The bell above the door chimed again. Rose called out her greeting without looking up from the latte she was pouring. "Be right with you," but the cafe fell silent. The kind of silence that presses against your eardrums, that makes your instincts scream danger even when you can't see the threat. Rose's hands stilled on the milk pitcher. Slowly she lifted her eyes. A man stood just inside the doorway, and Rose understood immediately why every customer had stopped breathing. He was beautiful in the way a blade is beautiful, all clean lines and lethal edges, Korean features carved with brutal precision, high cheekbones and a jaw that could cut glass. His black suit probably cost more than 3 months of the cafe's rent, tailored so perfectly it moved like a second skin, but it was his eyes that made Rose's heart stutter, dark and fathomless, and completely, utterly cold. 2 men flanked him, silent shadows in matching black. They weren't as striking, but they carried themselves with the same predatory awareness, hands clasped in front of them, eyes scanning the room with professional detachment. The beautiful man's gaze swept the cafe like a king surveying his domain. Then it landed on Rose and stopped. She forgot how to breathe. He moved toward the counter with unhurried grace, each step deliberate. The other customers practically pressed themselves against the walls to give him space. Rose's fingers tightened on the milk pitcher, her only anchor in a world that had suddenly tilted sideways. He stopped directly in front of her. Up close, he was even more devastating, and even more terrifying. There was something predatory in the way he studied her, like a cat deciding whether the mouse was worth the chase. "Your name." His voice was smooth, cultured, with barely a trace of accent. It should have been pleasant. Instead, it made Rose think of silk hiding steel. Rose. The word came out steadier than she felt. Rose Colson. Something flickered in those dark eyes. Recognition, maybe, or satisfaction. Colson? It wasn't a question, but Rose nodded anyway, unease crawling up her spine. "Can I help you with something?" "Yes." He tilted his head slightly, the movement elegant and wrong all at once. "I'd like to speak with your father." Every instinct Rose possessed screamed at her to lie, to say he wasn't here, to protect him from whatever this man wanted. But her father chose that moment to emerge from the back room, and the color drained from his face so fast Rose thought he might collapse. "Mr. Kang." Her father's voice was barely a whisper. Kang. Rose had heard that name before, whispered in Korean circles, always with a mixture of fear and respect. The Kang family controlled half of Seoul's underground, their influence reaching into every shadow, every backroom deal, every desperate transaction. And this man, with his cruel beauty and Arctic eyes, was at the center of it all. Kang Tae-min, the mafia prince who'd recently become the mafia king. Mr. Coulson. Tae-min's lips curved into something that might have been a smile on anyone else. On him, it looked like a death sentence. I believe we have business to conclude. Rose watched her father cross the cafe floor, each step heavier than the last. His hands trembled. She'd never seen her father's hands tremble. Mr. Kang, I just need a little more time, please. Just another month I can get you the money, I swear. We had an agreement. Tae-min's voice remained pleasant, conversational even. That made it so much worse. 6 months. That time has expired. I know, but the cafe, business has been slow, and I'm not interested in excuses. Tae-min glanced at his watch, a flash of silver against his wrist. You borrowed 5 million won. The interest has brought that to 8 million. You have 30 seconds to produce that amount, or I will take what I'm owed in other ways. Rose's blood turned to ice. 8 million won. That was over $6,000. They didn't have that kind of money. They'd never had that kind of money. Please. Her father was begging now, actually begging, and something inside Rose shattered. Please, I'll do anything, just give me more time. Time is the one thing I don't give freely, Mr. Coulson. Tae-min nodded to one of his men. Take him. Everything happened too fast. The man in black moved forward, reaching for her father. Rose saw her dad flinch, saw him stumble backward, saw the terror in his eyes that no father should ever show in front of his daughter. She didn't think, she just moved. Wait. Rose vaulted over the counter, stumbling slightly as she landed but catching herself. She put herself between her father and the approaching man, her heart slamming against her ribs. Wait, please. Tae-min raised one hand, and his man froze instantly. Then those cold, dark eyes fixed on Rose with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Move aside, Miss Coulson. No. Her voice shook, but she held her ground. There has to be another way. We'll pay you back, I promise, but please don't hurt him. I don't make promises to debtors. Tae-min stepped closer, close enough that Rose could smell his cologne, expensive and subtle. Your father made a choice. Now he faces the consequences. Then let me face them instead. The words were out before Rose could stop them, before she could think about what they meant. The cafe fell into that pressing silence again, even heavier than before. Tae-min's eyes narrowed slightly. What did you say? Rose's mouth was dry, her palms sweating, but she forced herself to meet his gaze. The debt. Let me pay it instead. However you want, just leave him alone. Rose, no. Her father grabbed her arm, but she shook him off gently. How old are you, Miss Coulson? Tae-min asked softly. 22. And you understand what you're offering? She didn't. Not really. But she knew her father was a good man who'd made a desperate mistake, and she knew that if she didn't do something right now, she would lose him forever. So she nodded. I understand. Tae-min studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Rose felt like she was being dissected, every part of her examined and catalogued and judged. Then he smiled, and it was the most beautiful, terrible thing she'd ever seen. Interesting. He turned to her father. Your debt is transferred to your daughter, effective immediately. Consider yourself fortunate, Mr. Coulson. Not many fathers receive such devoted children. No, please, you can't. Her father reached for her, but Tae-min's men stepped between them. The transaction is complete. Tae-min extended his hand toward the door. Miss Coulson, you're coming with me. Now? Rose's voice cracked. Did you imagine you'd have time to pack a bag? That cruel smile widened. You offered yourself to clear a debt. That means you belong to me now. Entirely. Rose looked back at her father one last time. He was crying, actually crying, and trying to push past the men in black to reach her. But they held him back easily. And Rose realized this was it. This was the price of love. She walked toward Tae-min on legs that didn't feel like her own. He didn't touch her, didn't guide her. He simply turned and walked toward the door, and she followed because what else could she do? Behind her, her father's voice broke on her name, but she didn't look back again. She couldn't. If she did, she might run, and then everything would have been for nothing. The car was black, expensive, and utterly silent. Rose sat in the back seat, Tae-min beside her, his presence overwhelming in the enclosed space. The city blurred past the tinted windows, familiar streets becoming foreign territory with each passing block. She'd lived in Seoul for 3 years, but suddenly it felt like a different world entirely. Where are we going? Her voice sounded small. Home. He didn't look at her, his attention on his phone as his thumbs moved across the screen. You're home. Yes. Rose clenched her hands in her lap, trying to steady her breathing. The reality of what she'd done was beginning to sink in, cold and heavy in her chest. She'd signed away her freedom to a man whose full name she'd learned less than an hour ago. A man who clearly operated outside the law, who inspired fear with his mere presence, who'd accepted her offer without hesitation or mercy. What will you? She stopped, reconsidered. What do you expect from me? Now he looked at her, and Rose wished he hadn't. Those dark eyes were utterly unreadable. Everything. The word hung between them, laden with implications she didn't want to examine too closely. Heat flooded her face, but she refused to look away. I meant what kind of work. I know what you meant. His lips curved slightly, the first real expression she'd seen from him. It wasn't reassuring. But my answer remains the same. You offered yourself to clear a debt, Rose Coulson. That means you belong to me until I decide otherwise. Your time, your presence, your body, all of it is mine to do with as I please. Her stomach nodded. I won't. You will. He cut her off calmly, matter-of-factly. You'll do exactly what I tell you to do, when I tell you to do it. That's what you agreed to. I agreed to work for you, not to. You agreed to transfer your father's debt to yourself. The contract you signed was quite explicit about the terms. He leaned back, still watching her. But if you'd like to void it, we can return to the cafe right now. I'll have my money by the end of the day, one way or another. The threat was clear. Rose bit down on her response, forcing herself to think instead of react. She'd made this choice. She'd walked into this willingly. Whatever came next, she'd have to endure it. No, she said quietly. I won't void it. Smart girl. He returned his attention to his phone, dismissing her. The rest of the drive passed in silence. Rose watched the city give way to an exclusive neighborhood she'd only seen in passing. High rises that pierced the sky, luxury brands glittering in shop windows, people who moved with the confidence of those who'd never worried about money. The car pulled into an underground garage, security gates closing behind them with a finality that made her chest tighten. Tae Min's penthouse occupied the entire top floor. Rose stepped out of the elevator into a space that screamed wealth and power. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seoul, minimalist furniture in black and chrome, art on the walls that probably cost more than her father's cafe. Everything was sharp angles and cold surfaces, beautiful and utterly unwelcoming. A woman appeared from a side hallway, middle-aged and stern-faced, wearing a crisp uniform. She bowed to Tae Min. Sir, this is Rose. She'll be staying here indefinitely. He shrugged off his jacket, handing it to the woman without looking at her. Show her to the guest room. Make sure she has everything she needs. Of course, sir. The woman turned to Rose, her expression neutral. Please, follow me. Rose glanced at Tae Min, but he was already walking away toward what looked like an office, his phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Korean she couldn't quite follow. Just like that, she was dismissed. The guest room was larger than her entire apartment had been. A king-sized bed dominated the space, dressed in white linens that looked impossibly soft. The attached bathroom was all marble and gleaming fixtures. A walk-in closet stood empty, waiting. My name is Mrs. Han, the woman said. I manage the household. If you need anything, you may ask me. Thank you. Rose set her purse down, the only thing she'd brought with her. Everything else was back at her apartment, a life she might never return to. What should I do now? Mrs. Han's expression softened slightly. Mr. Kang is working. He doesn't like to be disturbed during business hours. I suggest you rest. Dinner will be served at 7. She left Rose alone in the vast impersonal room. Rose sank onto the edge of the bed, her legs suddenly unsteady. The adrenaline that had carried her through the last hour was fading, leaving behind a hollow ache. She thought of her father, alone in the cafe, probably blaming himself. She thought of her life, the one she'd built brick by careful brick, now completely demolished. And she thought of Tae Min's words. Your body is mine to do with as I please. Rose wrapped her arms around herself, shivering despite the room's warmth. She'd sacrificed herself to save her father, yes. But what exactly had she sacrificed herself to? At 7, Mrs. Han appeared to escort her to dinner. Rose followed her to a dining room with a table that could seat 12. Only 2 places were set, at opposite ends. Tae-min was already seated, reading something on a tablet. Sit, he said without looking up. Rose took her seat, acutely aware of the distance between them, the formality of it all. Staff brought out course after course, food she couldn't identify, beautiful presentations she was too nervous to appreciate. She pushed her fork around her plate while Tae-min ate with methodical efficiency, still focused on his work. Finally, he set down his tablet. You're not eating. I'm not hungry. That wasn't a question. About your appetite. Eat. Rose's jaw tightened. I said I'm not. And I said eat. His voice didn't rise, but something in it made her hand move automatically, lifting the fork to her mouth. The food was excellent. She barely tasted it. Tae-min watched her take 3 bites before returning to his tablet. There are rules you need to understand. First, you'll do what I tell you, when I tell you. No arguments, no delays. Rose set down her fork carefully. I'm not a dog. No, you're a woman who owes me 300 million won. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and Rose felt exposed under that gaze. Second, you'll be available when I want you, day or night. If I call, you come. If I want your presence, you give it. Available for what? His smile was slow and dangerous. Whatever I decide? You still haven't told me what kind of work. Because there is no work, Rose. He leaned back, swirling wine in his glass. You're not here to file papers or answer phones. You're here because you offered yourself to me and I accepted. What that means, specifically, you'll learn soon enough. The implication crashed over her. Rose felt her face burn, anger rising to combat the fear. I won't be your, what? Say it. Your plaything. The word tasted bitter. Tae-min laughed, the sound devoid of humor. You think too highly of yourself. I have women for that. Professionals who know what they're doing. What you are is much more interesting. He stood, moving around the table with predatory grace. Your payment, collateral. A woman who walked into my world thinking sacrifice would be noble. Rose pushed back from the table, standing to face him even though he towered over her. I saved my father. You did. He was close now, too close. His presence overwhelming. And now you're mine. Every inch of you. Every moment of your day. Every thought in your pretty head. His hand came up, fingers tracing her jawline with a gentleness that belied his words. The third rule is the most important one. You don't leave. You don't contact anyone from your old life. You exist here for me, until I decide otherwise. Break that rule, and your father's debt returns. With interest, with consequences. Understood? Rose wanted to pull away from his touch, but she couldn't move. His fingers were cool against her skin, his eyes holding hers with an intensity that made her dizzy. Yes. Yes, what? She swallowed hard. Yes, I understand. Good girl. He stepped back, releasing her. Mrs. Han will bring you something to wear tonight. I expect you in my room at midnight. Don't be late. He walked away, leaving Rose standing alone in the vast dining room, her heart hammering against her ribs, her whole body trembling with something she refused to name as anticipation. Midnight approached with agonizing slowness. Rose sat on the edge of the guest room bed, wearing the nightdress Mrs. Han had delivered an hour ago. It was silk, pale ivory, elegant and revealing in equal measure. The fabric whispered against her skin with every nervous movement. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She'd never done this before, never been with anyone, never even come close. There'd been opportunities, in college, boys who'd shown interest, but she'd always pulled back. Waiting for something, though she'd never been sure what. Love, maybe. Connection. Something more than fumbling in the dark with someone whose last name she barely knew. And now her first time would be with a man who'd bought her, who saw her as property, who'd made it abundantly clear that her wants, her feelings, her inexperience, none of it mattered. The clock on the nightstand read 11:58. Rose stood, her legs unsteady. She could refuse, lock the door, climb into bed, pretend she'd fallen asleep. But then what? He'd made the consequences clear. Her father would suffer. And something told her Tae-min wasn't a man who accepted defiance. She walked through the silent penthouse, her bare feet soundless on marble floors. His bedroom door was open, light spilling into the hallway. An invitation, or a command. Rose paused at the threshold, her breath catching. Tae-min lay on the bed, eyes closed, one arm folded behind his head. He changed into black silk pants and nothing else. The lamplight painted shadows across his chest, highlighting the lean muscle, the dangerous grace even in repose. He looked like something carved from marble, beautiful and cold.
Are you going to stand there all night?
His eyes remained closed. Rose forced herself forward, crossing into his territory. I wasn't sure if you were awake. He opened his eyes then, turning his head to look at her. His gaze traveled slowly down her body, assessing. Come here. She moved to the side of the bed, acutely aware of how exposed she felt in the thin nightdress. I'm here. Closer. He shifted, making space beside him. On the bed, Rose climbed onto the mattress, careful to keep distance between them. The silk sheets were cool against her legs. Her heart hammered so loudly she was certain he could hear it. Taemin propped himself up on one elbow, studying her face. You're terrified. I'm fine. Liar. His hand came up, fingers brushing her collarbone, tracing the rapid flutter of her pulse. Your body betrays you. Rose pulled back slightly. What do you expect? You bought me like furniture. Now you want me to pretend I'm not afraid? I don't want you to pretend anything. His touch followed the curve of her shoulder, down her arm. Fear is honest. I prefer it to false bravery. Then why am I here? Because I want you here. His fingers caught hers, lifting her hand to examine it as if she were something curious, foreign. Because you belong to me now, and I can do whatever I want with you. So do it. The words came out sharper than intended, edged with anger and fear. That's what you brought me here for, isn't it? Something flickered in his expression, amusement, maybe, or interest. You think you know what I want? You made it clear enough at dinner. Did I? He pulled her closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his skin. Tell me, Rose, have you ever been touched by a man? Heat flooded her face. That's none of your everything about you is my business now. His hand moved to her hip, possessive. Answer the question. No. The admission felt like surrender. I haven't. His eyes darkened with something predatory. No one? No one. Why? Rose tried to pull away, but his grip tightened, holding her in place. Because I was waiting, it doesn't matter. You don't care anyway. You're right. I don't care about your romantic notions. But his touch gentled slightly, contradicting his words. But I do care about this. You're a virgin. It wasn't a question, but Rose nodded anyway. Taemin was silent for a long moment, his thumb tracing circles on her hip through the silk. Then he released her, sitting up and turning away. Get out! Rose blinked. What? Leave. Go back to your room. Confusion warred with relief. I don't understand, you said. I know what I said. His voice was clipped, controlled. And now I'm telling you to leave. But why? The question escaped before she could stop it. Isn't this what you wanted? He looked at her over his shoulder, his expression unreadable. What I want is complicated. What you're ready for is not. Go. Rose scrambled off the bed, her emotions a tangled mess. Relief that he wasn't going to force her. Confusion about why he'd stopped. And underneath it all, something else, something uncomfortably close to disappointment. She was halfway to the door when his voice stopped her. Rose. She turned back. Don't misunderstand this as kindness. I'm not letting you go. I'm simply choosing when and how to take what's mine. His eyes held hers, dark and intent. When I do claim you, it will be because you're begging me for it. Not because I commanded it. The words sent heat spiraling through her, confusing and unwelcome. That will never happen. His smile was slow, confident, cruel. We'll see. The next 3 days were torture of a different kind. Taemin ignored her completely. He left early, returned late, took his meals in his office. When they did cross paths, he looked through her as if she were invisible, as if that night in his bedroom had never happened. Rose told herself she was grateful for the distance. She explored the penthouse during the day, but at night, alone in the guest room, she couldn't stop thinking about him, about the way he'd touched her, assessed her, then sent her away, about what he'd said. When I do claim you, it will be because you're begging me for it. She wouldn't. She couldn't. Except some traitorous part of her wondered what it would feel like if she did. On the 4th night, everything changed. Rose was reading in the library when she heard voices from the living room, female laughter, high and confident. She told herself to stay hidden, that it wasn't her business. But curiosity, and something uglier, drove her to the doorway. A woman stood with Taemin near the windows. She was stunning, model tall, wearing a red dress that hugged every curve, dark hair falling in perfect waves down her back. She touched his arm familiarly, leaning close to whisper something that made the edge of his lips lift in a small smile. The smile hit Rose like a physical blow. She'd never seen him smile, genuinely amused. "You're so bad," the woman purred, her hand sliding up his chest. "Should we skip dinner? I can think of better ways to spend the evening." "Patience, Minji." But Tae-min's hand found her waist, pulling her closer. Rose should leave, should retreat to her room, and pretend she hadn't seen this. Instead, she stood frozen, watching as Minji pressed against him, as her hand moved to his jaw, as she kissed him slowly, deliberately. And Tae-min let her. Something cracked inside Rose's chest. Jealousy, raw and unexpected, flooded through her. She had no right to it. He owed her nothing. She was just payment for a debt, temporary and disposable. But watching him touch another woman, kiss another woman, after he'd made her feel so exposed and vulnerable in his bedroom, it hurt in ways she didn't want to examine. She must have made a sound because Tae-min's eyes opened. Over Minji's shoulder his gaze found Rose's. He didn't pull away, didn't stop. He held Rose's stare while Minji kissed his neck, his jaw, his mouth again. Rose turned and fled, her body shaking with an emotion she refused to name. Behind her she heard Minji's laughter, bright and victorious. She made it to her room before the anger enveloped her. She locked the door, slid down against it, and let herself feel the emotions. Not because she loved him, she couldn't love someone like him, but because for a moment, in his bedroom, she'd felt something. Connection, maybe. Possibility. And he'd just shown her exactly how foolish that was. The night stretched endlessly. Rose heard them in his room. The walls were too thick for actual sounds, but she knew. Her imagination filled in the rest, torturing her with images she couldn't escape. When dawn finally broke, Rose made a decision. She would survive this, she would endure whatever came, but she would never, ever let Kang Tae-min see her cry again. And she would certainly never beg him for anything. The pattern continued for 2 weeks. Different women, different nights, but always the same message. Rose learned their routines. Minji on Tuesdays and Fridays, a leggy actress named Soo-ah on Wednesdays, others whose names she didn't bother learning. They arrived in expensive cars, left in the early morning hours, and treated Rose like part of the furniture when they encountered her, which was almost worse than Tae-min's complete indifference. He still barely acknowledged her existence. They ate meals in silence when he bothered to show up at all. He walked past her in the hallways, as if she were invisible, and every night, Rose lay in her bed, listening to the sounds that drifted through the walls, hating herself for the jealousy that twisted in her gut. She was nothing to him, just a debt paid, a possession stored away until he decided what to do with her. On the 15th day, Rose made a decision. She couldn't live like this, existing in limbo, invisible and unwanted. If she was going to survive this, she needed to reclaim some piece of herself, even if it meant confronting the man who owned her. She found him in his office late one evening, working at his desk. The glow from his computer screen cast shadows across his face, making him look almost human. "I didn't call for you," he said without looking up. "I don't care." Now his eyes lifted, surprise flickering across his features before settling back into that cold mask. "Excuse me?" Rose stepped into the office, closing the door behind her. Her hands trembled, but she clenched them into fists. "You said I belong to you, that you own every moment of my time, every aspect of my life. Fine, but I refuse to be invisible. You're not invisible." "Really?" She moved closer to his desk. "When's the last time you looked at me? Actually looked at me, not through me? When's the last time you acknowledged I exist beyond being furniture in your penthouse?" Tae-min leaned back in his chair, studying her with that unreadable expression. "And this bothers you?" "Yes, it bothers me." The words came faster now, anger giving her courage. "You brought me here, made me some kind of prisoner, and then you ignore me. You parade your women through here night after night while I'm supposed to what? Sit quietly and be grateful you haven't thrown me out? I could do worse than ignore you, Rose. Then do worse." She slammed her hands on his desk, leaning forward. "Do something. Anything. Because this half-existence where I'm neither free nor claimed, it's killing me." Something shifted in his expression. Interest, maybe. Or danger. "Careful what you ask for. I'm not asking for anything except honesty. What am I doing here? If you don't want me, if I mean nothing to you, then let me go. Release the debt. I'll find another way to protect my father. There is no other way. Then tell me what you want from me." Rose's voice cracked despite her best efforts. Because right now, I don't understand any of this. You said you wanted me. You made me feel... She stopped, swallowing hard. And then you've spent 2 weeks showing me exactly how little I matter. Tae-min stood slowly, rounding the desk with that predatory grace. You think you don't matter to me? I think I'm convenient. Property you haven't decided how to use yet. He was close now, too close, but Rose refused to back down. Let him see her anger. Let him see that she wasn't the terrified girl from the cafe anymore. You want honesty? His hand came up, fingers catching her chin, tilting her face up to meet his eyes. Every woman I brought here was a test. Every night I ignored you was deliberate. I wanted to see how long it would take for you to break, for that careful composure to crack. Rose jerked away from his touch. That's sick. I never claimed to be anything else. But he followed her movement, backing her against the wall. I wanted to know if you'd stay indifferent or if something would shift, if you'd keep pretending you felt nothing. Why would you care what I feel? Because taking a woman who's terrified and unwilling holds no interest for me. But taking one who's desperate for me despite herself? His smile was dark, dangerous. That's infinitely more satisfying. Heat and anger warred in Rose's chest. You're manipulating me. Yes. You're trying to break me down until I want you. Yes, why? The question came out smaller than intended. Why does it matter? Taemin's hand pressed against the wall beside her head, caging her in. Because when I finally claim you, Rose, I want you begging for it. I want every wall you've built around yourself completely demolished. I want you so desperate for my touch that pride means nothing. Rose's breath came faster, her body responding even as her mind screamed at her to feel nothing. And if I never give you that, you will. His certainty was infuriating. You already are. I can see it in the way you look at me when you think I'm not watching. The way jealousy flashes in your eyes when another woman touches me. The way you're trembling right now. Not from fear, but from wanting something you've told yourself you shouldn't have. I don't want you. Liar. His free hand found her waist, pulling her against him. Your body betrays you every time. Rose tried to push him away, but her hands lacked conviction. I hate you. Good. Hate me. His mouth hovered near her ear, his breath warm against her skin. But admit you want me too. Stop pretending. Stop fighting what you feel. Why should I give you anything? But her voice shook, undermining her defiance. You've given me nothing but cruelty and indifference. Because despite everything, you can't stop thinking about me. Can't stop wondering what it would feel like if I touched you the way I touch them. Can't stop imagining yourself in my bed instead of alone in yours. Rose squeezed her eyes shut, hating how right he was. Hating herself for wanting him when he'd done nothing to deserve it. This isn't fair. Life isn't fair, Rose. You learned that the moment your father gambled away money he couldn't repay. His hand moved up her side, achingly slow. But I'm offering you a choice now. Stop fighting this. Stop pretending you don't want me. And if I do, if I admit it? She forced herself to meet his eyes. What changes? Everything. The word was a promise and a threat. Tell me what you want, Rose. Say it out loud. Pride warred with desire. With the loneliness of the past 2 weeks. With the need to feel something other than invisible. I want you to see me. I see you. No, you see a possession. Something you own. Her hands came up, pressing against his chest. I want you to want me. Not because I'm convenient or available or payment for a debt, but because you can't help yourself. Something fierce flashed in his eyes. You think I can help myself around you? That ignoring you has been easy? His hand tangled in her hair, forcing her to hold his gaze. I've thought of nothing but you for weeks. Every woman I brought here was a poor substitute for the one I actually wanted. But I refused to take you until you admitted you wanted it too. Why? Because I'm selfish and cruel, and I wanted you to suffer the way I've been suffering. He leaned closer, his lips almost touching hers. Wanting something you've told yourself you can't have. Aching for someone who should mean nothing to you. Rose's resolve crumbled. I want you. The admission felt like surrender. I hate that I do, but I can't stop thinking about you. Can't stop wanting... What? Say it. I want you to touch me. To make me forget everything except this moment. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I want you to want me the way I want you. Desperately. Completely. Are you begging me, Rose? She should say no, should maintain some shred of dignity. But she was so tired of fighting herself, of pretending, of being invisible. Yes, I am Tae-min. His control shattered. He kissed her with a hunger that stole her breath, backing her against the wall, his body pressing against hers. Rose's hands clutched at his shoulders, pulling him closer. When he finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard. My room. Now. His voice was rough with desire. And Rose, once we do this, there's no going back. You'll be mine in every way. Completely. Do you understand? Rose nodded, past the point of rational thought, past caring about consequences or complications. Yes. He lifted her into his arms, carrying her out of the office and down the hallway. Rose buried her face against his neck, her heart racing with anticipation and fear and something that felt dangerously close to hope. The bedroom door closed behind them with a finality that should have terrified her. Instead, Rose felt only relief. Relief that the waiting was over, that she'd finally stopped fighting what she wanted. Taemin set her down beside the bed, his hands framing her face. Last chance to change your mind. I'm not changing my mind. Then tell me again, what do you want? Rose met his eyes, her voice steady despite the trembling in her limbs. I want you to make me yours, completely, the way you promised weeks ago. His smile was predatory, possessive, and entirely satisfied. Then that's exactly what I'm going to do. He kissed her again, slower this time, unhurried, as if he had nowhere else to be. His hands traced her with